am your host, Reverend Patrina White McClure, here on WCEG Network. I'm so super excited about our wonderful guest on this evening. But before I introduce her, let me remind you that WCEG Network is a 501c3 nonprofit community radio station. So if you are looking for a place to sow your seed or to advertise your business or ministry, give us a call at 404 490 8646 490 8646 in the 404, or you can contact us via our website at www.wcegtalkradio.com, and we will get back in touch with you. And without further ado, I want to introduce our interesting guest on this evening. She is LaTessa Meader. She is the founder and the president of uh, Lord help me, Jesus, Aspire Aerospace Education. And welcome, LaTessa. How are you?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Reverend Patrina. It's a delight to be on here this evening. And yeah, Aspire Aerospace Education is what we're here to talk about. It's a nonprofit focused on aerospace education. We're building a pipeline starting in kindergarten, building with these students through middle school, high school, and into their educational institutions and beyond into their career.
Wonderful. Now, what is aerospace? Is there a difference between that and avionics?
Then aviation. So aviation is more airplane, so in the atmosphere, and the space part is going to outer space and getting out of our atmosphere. So aerospace really just kind of smushes them together. There's a lot of the physics principles are the same between them. So kind of just combines both of them. I love both aviation and space. So aerospace encompasses all of it.
All right. Now, I've met a lot of people who have started different types of schools, whether it's Christian schools, other faith schools, hair cutting, beauty, barber, all kinds of different schools. But how did you land upon aerospace?
It is not a straight line to get there. I started out as a high school math teacher. I went to the University of Georgia for math education. I love teaching. I've known most of my life that I was going to be a teacher. It is my passion. So went to school and I did that and was teaching high school. And I love doing that. But I also found myself really intrigued with engines, turbine engines specifically, and really wanted to learn more about turbine engines. And I was like, I don't know how else to do this, but to join the military. So I enlisted in the Air Force as a C-130 turbine engine mechanic at Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi. Spent 7 years in the reserves fixing engines, loved it, learned a lot about engines and how they physically work. And I remember on a flight line one night, the sun was setting behind the C-130. We're going out to repair something. And it was so beautiful. And I was like, I want to know everything about this aircraft. I want to know why the wing curves this way. I want to know what this antenna is here. I want to know why these parts move. And at that time, I didn't know anything, had never been around aviation in my life before that. So went back to school. I went to Georgia Tech and got a master's in aerospace engineering so I could study everything about the aviation, and really enjoyed that, and have now deployed with my unit. So I was a mechanic throughout all that, went back to school and deployed with my unit, and they got to know me a little bit better. And they're like, hey, why don't you come join us and be a pilot instead of the mechanic? And I was like, yes, please. I would love that. So in 2012, I went to the officer side of the military. So I commissioned and went to pilot training, and been flying the C-130 since 2012. And currently I'm flying out of Dobbins Air Reserve Base in Georgia.
What a wonderful story. Oh my goodness. So your whole background, you had no training in this, but because of your exposure to just one portion of the airplane, the engine, that was enough to take you to your destiny, so to speak.
It absolutely was. And so now what we're here to talk about, Aspire Aerospace Education, is I was so late in my career to find out that I loved aviation. And so I want to introduce students to these concepts and show them these incredible careers in aerospace, starting in elementary school and not starting in their mid-20s. So they've got a 20-year head start on where I am, and can start their career a lot earlier. They're wonderful jobs, a lot of job satisfaction. They're good paying jobs. They're interesting. They're all over the country, so you can do it from anywhere. It's an amazing career field that I don't think we talk about enough. So that's what Aspire Aerospace Education aims to do.
So what are some of the different types of positions in this career field, in this particular community?
It's enormous. It's so wide ranging. Almost no matter what your interest is, you can find that with an aerospace component. So even if you want to do real estate, there is real estate for aviation. So you could be selling and leasing hangars. If you want to be a lawyer, there's an aviation lawyer component. And that's in addition to all of the better known parts of air traffic controllers, right? They can be at a small airfield. They could be at a huge airfield like Hartsfield-Jackson. Could be on the military side. So a lot of the vast majority of these jobs have a military component as well, if you want to have that service as well as that training and discipline that comes with the military. There's also pilots, which most people know about. And there's a huge range of what you can do with that as well. It's not just, I want to be a pilot. Do you want to fly for the military? Do you want to fly charter? Do you want to fly with a big airline? Do you want to be a flight instructor? So there's all these different careers underneath these big headers of, oh, I want to be a pilot. I want to be ATC. Maintenance is one of my favorite ones to talk about. I was a line mechanic. So I was out on the flight line, moving and replacing parts. And a lot of times it would be something would break as they're starting the engine or as they're starting a mission. And you've got to go fix that airplane or the airplane can't take off. It's not going to be able to complete its mission. So it's very dynamic. And there's a lot of like energy in that, because if you don't do your job and do it well, right, there's immediate consequences that you can see to that. And same thing in the airline business, right? Same thing there. If a plane comes in and it needs a component replaced, it's got to be done now, right? They're on tight schedule. So it's a very dynamic environment. But in that one, a line mechanic is outside typically, right? So you're in the hot heat when it's summertime, you're in the rain when it's raining, you're in the cold in the winter. So you've kind of got to be able to manage all of these external challenges while you're replacing something on the flight line. Another component to maintenance is I was a propulsion engineer at Delta Airlines, amazing company. I loved working for them. At Delta Tech Ops, they bring in an entire turbine engine and break it down to every nut, bolt, and blade in that engine. So that's very detailed work. You have to be very detailed, very meticulous. You know, everything has to be in order because you've got to know where everything came from. And so that's a much more detailed and focused, and you're typically inside in the air conditioning, right? So you don't have all those other dynamic factors. So two very different personalities to do these two different jobs. And yet they're both maintainers, they're both mechanics. So those are the kind of conversations I like to have with high schoolers when they're at that point where they're like, oh, maintenance interests me. And it's like, all right, let's dig a little deeper. What part of this interests you, right? Do you want to focus on one specific component? Do you want to do the line replacement, like on the flight line? Do you want to do depot where you're breaking the engine down? So having those more in-depth conversations about where they really could go with this job. And there's so much more to it, right? Those are just a couple of the examples.
Well, I love how your knowledge base about this whole career is so varied, because the general population just doesn't think about those things, or we're not aware or exposed to those that knowledge.
Absolutely. And that's where we want to start these conversations, and we want to start them young. So starting in elementary school, there is some aviation programming. Like we talked about where I'm at right now, I'm at Warner Robins Air Force Base. I'm about to support TEFCA, the Transportation Education Foundation of Georgia, and running the Georgia High School Aviation Competition. So we're doing that down here at the Air Force Base. And that is, so we're partnering with these other nonprofits, but there's things like this that exist for the high schoolers. There's a little bit in middle school, like the Civil Air Patrol starts at age 12, so kind of middle school age. And there's next to nothing for elementary school or young middle school age students out there. So we're looking at this pipeline of how do we get more passionate and interested people in these excellent aerospace careers. And if we're starting that conversation in high school, we're too late. We needed to start that conversation 10 years ago, right? So that's what we're doing. We're starting that conversation in elementary schools. And we'll talk a little bit more about the curriculum that we have for elementary schools. And then we grow with them into middle school, where we do hands-on summer camps at airports. The DeKalb Peachtree Airport is where we run our summer camp. We can talk about that one a little more in detail as well. And then growing with them into high school, we do resume reviews and mock interviews, and we're that career database. So the things that I've been talking with you about of like, okay, you want to be a maintainer, but look at all these subcategories, right? What really interests you in this category? So we're kind of building out that database so that we can share that with the students and they can really take their time and look into it. And then we can start stitching into the colleges, like AIM, where they can get their A&P license, or even straight into a job. You can work at an FBO, a fixed base operator, which is typically at smaller airports, like DeKalb Peachtree Airport. You can work at one of those even in high school as an after school job, or right after high school as you're kind of getting your foot in the door to aviation. You start to learn the lingo, right? There's a lot of acronyms, a lot of specific words around aviation. You're also learning the safety of how to operate in that, because it can be a very dangerous environment if you don't know how to behave correctly in that environment, like where the dangers are, right? So they can start those jobs after school in high school, or, you know, right after school, while they're going, oh yeah, I do want to go get my A&P, my airframe and power plant license to be a mechanic. So we're trying to build this pipeline from elementary through middle to high, and then start making these partnerships with educational institutions, and then for their final careers.
So that also includes like the state's education department and the different county and city education departments to try to pump this information into those to develop the curriculum for them. Well, you already have it developed, but
we do. We have, so we're starting to make some of those connections. This was a very grassroots project.
Okay.
It started out just kind of looking at that pipeline and going, this doesn't exist. We aren't having these conversations with elementary school students, and we should be starting these conversations. So let's write some curriculum. So we wrote some curriculum. It's the elementary school curriculum is a week long in 30 to 45 minutes a day, depending on the age of the student. And it tells a story about aviation in that week. So one of the examples is the hurricane hunters with the military. It talks about the pilots, the navigators, the weather officers, the load masters that are all in the hurricane hunter aircraft that are flying through these storms, right? They fly through them, they drop drop-ons, which is a little tube with a parachute that takes a lot of data readings as it goes down, like the wind, the temperature, the barometric pressure, right? And they're using all that information to feed it into the models to predict where the storm's going to go next. Right? So they're flying through the storm to collect that data, and then they send that data to the National Hurricane Center. And that's what they're using for their models to predict the storms. Then after a storm, say, passes over an island, say we want to do a humanitarian mission at that point and take food, water, and medical supplies to the people who need them. So now in this storyline, we're still talking about how do we do that? Well, the aerial port squadron builds up the pallets with food, water, and medical supplies. The flight planners plan the mission to the island. The maintainers keep the airplanes flying. The fuelers keep the airplanes fueled up, right? And so it goes through all of these careers that have to work together to accomplish this huge mission. And that's one of the things I love about aerospace. Everything you do in aerospace is big. You can't do any of it on your own. You have to have a team to do anything in aerospace. And that is amazing. And so then we talk about these careers. after we talk about each one, we have a link in the curriculum that is a video on that career. So it kind of brings the expert into the room for the students to kind of hear from the expert. And then I tie the questions of the Georgia Standards of Excellence in Math and Science curriculum. So what they're learning in their classroom, we ask questions using that material about the career. So it's tying what they're learning in the classroom to this future career. And that's tiered K through 5. So each year that the student goes through one of these storylines, the goal is to have a new storyline for them to hear more about different facets of aerospace, and also see where what they're learning that year can directly be tied into that career.
Well, that is awesome because they can see a direct connection of the information that they're learning and how it can actually benefit them in the future. So they might even be motivated to do well in those subjects, or be driven, if you will, to do their best because they have an end game. Because all too often kids go to school, and I remember I was like that. I'm like, what do I need to know history for?
Yes.
What about where do I use algebra? Who is using this information? And to my regret, it's like, oh man, had I paid attention way back then, I wouldn't have to go back and research all of this stuff because I would already have it up here.
Yes. Yes, especially with the math and science parts. The STEM, we're very heavy on STEM material in aerospace. And that's part of the goal too, right? So kind of in our current model, we get to upper middle school and high school and we start talking about aviation, and sometimes, right, if they're lucky. But at that point, again, they haven't had that goal, right? They haven't had something to tie the math and science that they've been learning since elementary school too. And that's one of the biggest questions that we get from students is, oh, when am I going to use this? Nobody uses this in the real world. It's like, oh, but we do. And let me show you why. So showing them how that connects to a future career, I think could be very motivating for students and set them up for success when they are in high school and then go on to either a MATIS training program or a college or whatever education suits them. Our goal is to have them already build a strong foundation before they get there.
That is awesome. I love that. So I take that it requires some political engagement with the different politicians in the state of Georgia to help institute all of this, right?
It will. We aren't there yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we kind of started grassroots. So I wrote this storyline, the Hurricane Hunters, and was like, let me give it to a couple teachers. I had some connections, right? And I was like, let them teach it, see how it goes. It was written so that a teacher who doesn't know anything about aerospace can teach this curriculum. It's written out like a script so they can just read it. And then the links bring that expert into the room. And then they teach what they already know with the math and science tied to that career. So it can be taught by any teacher, right? And
wow.
Yeah. So, and that's important because if it's just me teaching it, it's not scalable and we're never going to make an impact. So it was written so that any teacher can teach this material. And where are we going with that one?
Oh, I was talking about the connections with the politicians.
Oh, yes. So we started bottom up on this. So I started with individual teachers. And at this point, I've got some connections with principals. Henderson Mill Elementary School is amazing. They're the first STEAM certified school in Georgia. And they try very hard. They're very focused on STEAM. They do all kinds of projects throughout the year. And one of the things they adopted was Aspire, which I love. So they teach it school-wide, K through 5. So everybody in the school gets to see the curriculum, which is the goal, right? If the principals or teachers find value in it, is to let as many students see this as possible. It serves as an excellent review there towards the end of the year because it covers pretty well all of the Georgia Standards of Excellence, the math and science curriculum that they learn throughout the year. So if they do it towards the end of the year, it kind of reviews everything they've learned that year. And it kind of works the other way too. So if you're going into 4th grade at the very beginning of the year, they could use the 3rd grade curriculum and kind of review, get the students' juices flowing again before they start into their new curriculum and review the topics that they learned in 3rd grade in that example. So it kind of works at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year, either way, to review the material that they've been learning in the schools. So I've kind of started with teachers, and now I've got some connections with principals and some STEAM coordinators. But we're at the point where we've tested it. We've run it. This is our 4th year we've run it. So I'm really happy with where it's at. We know it works well. We've worked out a couple of the kinks, right, and cleaned it up. It's ready to go. So I'm ready to start meeting some of the higher ups, either on the Board of Education or on the political side, to sort of show them what we have and see if they find the value in it as well.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned that you also have a summer program.
Yeah.
So who can come to it? How do we plug into it? All of that good stuff.
It's on our website, which I think is going to be linked in the show as well. So scroll to the bottom and it says summer camp in there. We have 2 weeks we're offering this year, and we're offering full days. We had been doing just half days, but parents asked if we could do full days, and the students love it. So like, all right, we'll add in some more curriculum. We'll build it out to a full day. So we've got 2 full day summer camps, June 6th, 2nd through 6th, and July 14th through 18th. And I will send you a flyer as well. So it's got all that information on it if you want to share that with anybody. And it goes over the physics and operations of flight. So we do things like the Bernoulli principle, where we demonstrate how wings create lift. We build a density tower. So with like corn syrup and honey and dish soap and water. And so all these things have different densities. And so when you pour them in, they stay completely separate. They don't mix together. So it's really cool for the students to be able to visualize the differences in density. And then we use that to flow into a conversation on air density, which matters a lot with engines. So we talk about that when we're talking about engines, and it gives them that way to visualize density. So we do physics stuff like that. We have like a little wind tunnel. We'll do aviation weather, which is a huge topic in aviation. We'll do aerospace physiology, actually have aeromedical members come in and talk about aerospace physiology, what happens to your body when you go up in altitude. And in commercial airplanes, right, we say pressurized. So it's a very minimal. Your body only feels like it's 3,000 feet or so higher than where you're at. So it's not a huge difference. But in military airplanes, sometimes we do airdrops. So we open up the back of the airplane so we get completely depressurized. So talking about the differences in what happens there. You also lose oxygen as you go up in altitude. So if you're doing very high altitude airdrops, we actually have to be on oxygen because there's not enough oxygen molecules in the air. So all those kind of conversations we get into. The students are so engaged. I absolutely love it. And then we do a little bit on the operations side. So we'll learn the phonetic alphabet. We'll talk about radio calls, and then we'll go actually tour the air traffic control tower. So we'll go up in the tower, hear them talking to the airplanes on the ground, where the students just learn some of that lingo, right? They were hearing some of the radio calls, and they get to see this career in action. It was the same thing at FBOs, or fixed base operators, which is essentially a gas station for small airplanes. And you go in there and there's kind of what you would find at a gas station. They usually have some snacks and some water and a restroom and fuelers. So the people at the FBO actually put the fuel in the aircraft for you. And that's one of the jobs that you can have at a fairly young age working at an FBO. There's usually positions there that people with little aviation training can start there at these FBOs. So we go and take tours of those. So they actually get to see these careers in action. We have speakers from pilots to meteorologists come in and to the camp, and just, we have a great time. The parents usually are like, hey, will you run a camp for the adults next time?
I was going to say I need to be one of those students
Yes.
myself, because that sounds so interesting. And again, you said the summer camps are from June 2nd through 6th,
Yep.
and then July 14th through 18th.
Correct.
And they can go to your website to register.
Absolutely.
And can you say that website out loud?
Yes, it's Aspire Aero Ed. So it's kind of shortened, Aspire Aerospace Education, to Aspire, ASPIRE, Aero, AERO, Ed, ED.org. AspireAeroEd.org.
Now, how large are your classes?
We do 16 is a pretty good amount to still really be able to be very engaged and hands-on with the students. So 16 is what we have. We still have several slots in both camps open if people do want to go register.
All right. Now, are there internship positions available for anybody who needs them for whatever the
There are, yeah. So volunteers, we welcome volunteers. This has all been a labor of love. It is a nonprofit. So the vast majority of our time is just volunteer work. So if we've got anyone who wants to come volunteer at the camp, they always have a great time as well. And I'm also interested in speaking with any teachers, any educators in elementary or middle school age, or really high school if they want to teach elementary, middle school type lessons. And because the goal is to start expanding this, because mostly I've been teaching the camp. I've had one or two other people that are teaching with me, but at this point, there's a demand for more camps. So if you know any educators listening that are interested in supporting Aspire, and I do have some funding to pay the teachers. So if I have certified teachers, there is opportunities to work over the summer to get paid, which they're not typically working over the summer. So it should work out well if you find someone who is interested.
Awesome, awesome. That's a good word for anybody that's needing summer work. All of you teachers, go to aspireaero.ed.org.
Yep, aspireaeroed.org. And our email is also on that website, and it's leadership@aspireaeroed.org.
Oh, awesome. Now, what types of skills or educations for the teachers are required? Like, do they have to have a specialty?
For elementary school, they're all generalists. So they've all taught the math and the science. That's just how they roll in elementary school. So they are very well rounded typically. And then in middle school, having some sort of math and science, physics type background, but I can teach them what they need to know for the camp. If they're an enthusiastic teacher, I am confident that we can prepare them to teach the camp.
Well, wonderful. That sounds cool. I hear, so I understand the funding. Are you getting like grants or?
We would love to do some grants. It takes a lot of time investment to write grants. So we're getting to the point where we do need to start looking into that. And we've done enough work that I'm also confident in doing that at this point. I'm confident saying we have a program that's worth funding. We've done almost 10,000 student hours of instruction over the last 4.5 years with all volunteers, right? So we're all just a labor of love. And I love that. I love working with these people who are passionate about aerospace education. But we're also looking for someone to help write grants. So no one has a lot of experience that's working with me right now. So if you have someone listening that's interested in getting involved on the grant side, it's an awesome group of people working together. We have a great time. The students have a great time. And to get much bigger than we are right now, we are going to start needing some sort of funding so that I can pay teachers to continue to expand the program. So we'll see if you get anybody interested in volunteering with some specific skills to help us out.
All right. I think I have one or two numbers I can funnel to you.
Awesome.
To get started with. They have success in those particular areas. So now we know that your team is pretty much volunteers. And now what are their skill sets? Are they just
it's varied. It's just a group of great people. So entrepreneurs, a couple of them are entrepreneurs. All of them have some passion for aerospace or aviation. There's military pilots, there's civilian pilots, there's teachers, there's educators. And then a lot of the people that come to just speak at the course, right, are engineers, and could be at SpaceX, could be at NASA. So we've had, could be students from like the Georgia Institute of Technology. So a huge variety of people that come to support and to just share their time and knowledge and experience, because they also believe that this is so important to start sharing with our students younger than high school students.
That is interesting because, like you mentioned already, most people don't find out what they're going to do until they're either in high school or already in college, because periodically you'll hear college students, I'm just here.
Yep.
I'm trying to figure it out. I'm making it up as I go, that kind of thing. And so this is a good way or a potential direction that they can go into that career field, since it has so many different opportunities within it. Um, and I like how you said you're going to the different college programs to inform them or their students on consider us, because I don't think enough careers do that in the colleges. And then sometimes they go to the colleges, recruit the people, only to discover that there may even be things in their background that prevent them from going into particular career fields.
Yes.
Is that also true within your area of specialty?
Yes, that's an interesting conversation that we typically have with the high schoolers when we're talking about going into these careers. Essentially, every aerospace career will have a drug testing program. You cannot do any of this if you're under the influence, right? So that's something to make sure that they're making good choices, right? As there will be, all of this will have drug testing to go with it, because your people's lives are in your hands, right? You've got to do a good job at your job. And a lot of them will have background checks as well. So make good choices to start with. But if you meet that baseline, right, there's so many opportunities here. Aerospace is the #1 export for Georgia, which most people don't know. There are over 800 aerospace companies employing over 200,000 Georgians. We hardly ever talk about it. It's over $11 billion with a B in revenue. Which is a over $57 billion economic impact in Georgia. So, and that includes people who are making parts, repairing parts, fixing engines, the pilots, the airlines. There's so many different facets to this, and it blows my mind how little we talk about it.
Interesting. What about age restrictions in some of the specialties?
There's age-wise, typically by the time you graduate high school, you're good. So 18 for the most part. You may be able to get a job at an FBO, a fixed base operator, doing various different things. Probably 16. I'd have to find out what technically their age cutoff is. But I know there have been people working after school at some of these fixed base operators. So I'm going to guess 16, but for sure by 18, they should be good to go age-wise to get into the field. Everything in aviation has some specific training, whether, it's air traffic controller has a certification, AMPs, the airframe and power plant maintenance. So to be a maintainer, you've got to have the certification. So, and then a lot of places require a degree. So to be in the military, if you want to be a military pilot, you're an officer, and to be an officer, you have to have a 4-year degree. So some of the paths are degree paths and some of the paths are not degree, right? It's some sort of technical training or certification. So I love suggesting to high schoolers to look at some of these jobs, where they're either doing customer service or refueling the airplane or whatever. Like I said, it's kind of like a fancy gas station for airplanes, right? So looking at an FBO where they can do some of these entry-level jobs kind of right off the bat, right? Where they don't have to have a lot of training to get into this aviation. And now they're learning the aviation lingo, because there's a lot of it in aviation. They're learning their personal skills, right? If they're doing customer service, they're working on that. And they're learning the safety around aircraft and really learning where they could go, oh, I do want to be a maintainer, or man, air traffic control looks so cool, because they're around it. So that's such a great place to get your foot in the door into aviation, for a student, for someone who's very young that maybe doesn't know exactly what they want to do. And it gets you into aviation while you're getting paid something, right? So there's a bit of a bar to get in, right? To get your private pilot's license. But there are programs out there where if you assist with the maintenance, you're under the supervision of an actual AMP, but you can assist with maintenance and earn a flight hour, right? So there's ways that you can work through that. There's scholarships for it. If you join the military, the GI Bill will pay for some pilot training. So there's absolutely ways to do it. I got into aviation and basically worked on getting scholarships and things like that. So it's doable without being a whole lot of out of pocket. So getting your foot in the door in that kind of FBO area is, I think, a great way to get started.
That is excellent. Now, what if now your students are older? Do you do anything with adults?
We haven't at this point. So K through 12 was kind of the initial concept of building this pipeline. We just went to Atlanta Tech Week in November, and that was kind of our first introduction to industry. I really hadn't introduced what we were doing to industry before that, maybe just a couple of friends here and there, right? But this was a sort of wide industry convention, and I was blown away by how well they received what we're doing. They're like, this is so needed. This is valuable. We want this. They want students who have seen this coming up through elementary, middle, and high school, where they've got an idea of, oh yeah, this is how, this career path flows, and they know what they're looking for. So we're in need. The entire industry, across the industry, is in need of these passionate, well-trained people. So if we start this conversation younger and we can start feeding into this career path, it would be amazing for everybody. These are really good jobs. These are well-paying jobs, great job satisfaction, awesome people in the aviation industry. When any of us start talking about airplanes or rockets, it's hard to get us to stop talking. We're all just so excited about what we get to do every day. So industry really received what we're doing very well. And along with that, there are industry partners that have offered scholarships for the camp as well. So everything I've done has been free of charge for the schools. I'm just passionate about what we're doing. For the summer camp, because I pay the teachers, there is money to register for the summer camp, but I never want funding to stop someone from getting involved in aviation. So we will fundraise for students who cannot come up with the funds to go to the summer camp. So don't let that stop you. We'll find a way to make it work.
Would you have a special word for parents who, well, you just said financial piece, but the value of them investing in their children to connect them, whether it's to get them there, give them the lunch money so that they can eat whatever. How valuable is that when there is active parental engagement?
Ask me the question again. I don't think I tracked all the way.
Parents tend to almost take a hands-off approach to a degree off of their kids because they feel like, well, it's the summer, food, you got food, clothing, shelter. You might make some of the days of the summer camp and not all of them. They kind of minimize the value of investing in their children, and especially in a career like this. But yes, how important, and you mentioned the word enthusiastic.
Yes.
How enthusiastic should the parents be about connecting them to Aspire education?
This has been huge for the students that have gone through it, and they absolutely love what we're doing. So I have parents, if anybody wants to talk to another parent who has been through, their kid has been through these camps, and to get their opinion on it, I have some that I know would love to share their experience. But yeah, parental involvement in education all the way through is invaluable, right? Just demonstrating what the behavior should be, right? Demonstrating that this is a priority, that education is important, that education is going to take you wherever you want to go, right? That's the key. That's the path. is focusing on the education, and having parents prioritize that and demonstrating that to their student is absolutely invaluable in school, in summer camps, in all of it, right? And we kind of learned our lesson the hard way a little bit on that, because we did do fundraising, and I gave full ride scholarships to a handful of students, and all but like two just didn't show up, didn't even bother to call or cancel, because they had no skin in the game. They didn't value it because it was given to them. So we learned that the hard way the first couple of years. So we do require some small financial investment so that they at least recognize that, yes, this there is a lot of value in what you're getting. Even if we do the fundraising and we cover the cost of it, that it is important to, if you say you're going to be somewhere, to be somewhere. So we do have some small financial investment from the parents, even if we're going to do scholarships. But I just don't want the finances to be the barrier for entry into aerospace, because it doesn't have to be. It can be, right? There's steps you can take that do require a big financial step, which just isn't practical for everybody. But it doesn't have to be that way. So this is one of those ways in which we can make it accessible for everybody.
That is amazing how people don't really value that which is given to them. But then when they have to fight and scrap for it, then it's like, hey, this means more than, somebody just handing it to me. And you would think it would be in reverse. It's
Yes.
almost like salvation. We don't receive Jesus because we don't see the sacrifice or understand it that he made on behalf of us, with us coming up on resurrection weekend. We don't see the value in it sometimes until our skin is in the game, when we keep running into the hard knocks of life, and we start losing and nothing's going right, and then we see our need for the Lord, and so that's when we engage in our relationship with him a lot of times. But that's a human thing among all disciplines of life. I don't even care where it is,
Right.
people are just like that,
The
they would rather spend, huh?
conundrum of the human condition.
Yes, exactly. And so how do you advertise for this, the
We've,
summer camp?
we've got a flyer, so I've put it out to schools that are already engaged with Aspire. But I encourage people to share it. So I wanted to keep spreading out there. So it's not limited to anybody. We're just trying to get the word out there. So I'll make sure that you have the flyer again that's got all the details on it, and you've got the website for our summer camp, and all the information's in there as well. So like everything we've done, it's all grassroots, sort of word of mouth, going, yes, this is valuable. We do need to have this program. So that's kind of how it's spread so far. But we're at an inflection point where I think it might start getting bigger, and the information may start coming from the top down instead of the bottom up, if we can start getting some either politicians or board of education, and getting some people who make bigger decisions for either a county or city or whatever, instead of just going each individual teacher and individual school.
All right, everybody in the church biz audience, if each of us would reach one, then the knowledge would be spread about the opportunities made available for our young people. You said K-5 through 12?
We do. So K-5 was the storylines that I was talking about that get taught by the teachers in the school. So that's the elementary part of the curriculum. And then for the middle school part, it is these summer camps. So we've got those 2 summer camps this summer. We've got other airports that are interested. So geographically, depending on where your listeners are from, DeKalb Peachtree Airport's the only place we're currently teaching it, but we've got interest up in Cherokee County and Fulton County. So we may start expanding geographically in the coming summers as well. So that's expanding time-wise as well as location-wise. And then in high schools, we've just gone to a few high schools, a lot of which have seen what we were doing with the elementary and middle schools, and they were like, hey, what do you have for high school? We're like, well, if we haven't really built that all out yet, we're still in process of building that career database, but we can go and have a conversation with the students. And that's what we've done so far with the few of the high schools. And the goal next is to start really stitching in with educational institutions where we've got a lot of connections with Georgia Tech. We're partnering with Kennesaw State University's aerobatic robotics team for the summer camp this summer. They're going to come, and the plan is to build like a wing with the students at the camp, to build a little wooden and kind of shrink wrapped wing to show them the curvature on a wing. And then other places like AIM, the Aviation Institute of Maintenance, as well as other universities. So start building these pathways to the training or the college, depending on what they want to focus on, as well as connections with industry. So there's places, Adventure Aviation is one that we've recently started working with, and they take a high school intern typically every year or so. So we've got some people connected in with that they can start their aviation journey while in high school. So they do usually a summer program or an after school program. So there's building these opportunities where students can really start moving forward in their career while they're in high school or right after high school when they start looking at training.
Good, good. Now, how many career days do you do a year?
So many.
It sounds like it. It
I
sounds
love
like
it though. I always get so excited about talking about aviation and seeing their faces light up when we talk about all these careers. And my favorite part of those is, you have whatever your period of time is and you talk about it. And it's usually like, okay, it's time to go. And the kids are like, no, I have more questions. And like, that's awesome that they want to stay and ask questions and learn more. That's when you've really got them engaged.
good, good. And I take it you have flyers there to hand out to them so that they could take them home to
Yes.
mom and dad.
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Well, we're getting really, really close near the end of our time. Are there any other topics that you want to discuss before we go off air?
I think we covered it. I mean, I could talk about airplanes all day if you want that.
Got you, got you. Now, how long? And you said your competition starts in Warner Robins
Yep,
beginning.
that's tomorrow. Tomorrow, it's a 1 day event, and it's typically high schools who have an aviation program or an aviation high school that get involved with it. So TEFCA, the Transportation Education Foundation of Georgia, they run this, and Aspire just partners with them on components of it. We're doing the radio challenge or the air traffic control challenge tomorrow with the students, and there's multiple other challenges for them throughout the day.
But all of the careers in aerospace are undermanned. Is that what you're really saying?
It is, yes. So there's a huge demand. It's going to continue to grow in aerospace for maintainers, for air traffic controllers, for pilots. There's a demand for all of it out there, and these are really good paying jobs. These are good work environments, good pay, longevity. And if you work for like an airline, you get benefits like free flights on the airline, which is a game changer.
Yes.
So it's a really, really wonderful industry to be involved in. And I hope we can show students that. And, if we change one student's mind, then we've made a difference.
Now, going on, especially nationally, we're hearing more about the various airplane accidents, mishaps. What would you say to calm the fears of the public?
It's still much safer to travel by air than by car. So it seems more dramatic when things happen, but it's almost because we've normalized car accidents, which is sad in of itself. And accidents happen, right? When you're moving people and metal at 50 miles plus, on the road right next to each other, or a couple hundred miles an hour in the air, things can go wrong, but they rarely do in aviation. We definitely had a string of things happening this spring. But it's partly because it gets communicated more. It's, looking statistically, it's significantly safer to fly, to be in the air than it is to be in a car on the ground. So it's don't make more of it than it really is, I guess, is part of it. Things could go wrong anywhere, and I'm not saying they're never going to go wrong in the air, but you're actually much safer there than you are down here.
And I have to take a few flights in a couple of weeks, so I needed that for myself. But as I listened to the news, even early yesterday morning, that one police officer in South Fulton County, Georgia, who was killed because the driver hit him head on. I mean, that was so tragic. All he was doing was patrolling, and, time and fate met up with each other. And then the last few days, a lot of tragic road accidents have occurred. And I'm like, well, either way, if I'm talking about going to heaven, I got to get there some way. So I just don't want to suffer going down, the panic of it all, or the imagined panic of it all.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Most of the fear is in our heads, as it is with most things. So I'm very confident in your flights. That you will not have any problems. When kind of funny anecdote to that, we fill out safety surveys through work, right? And it's like, what is the most dangerous part of your job? Like, how can we make this safer? Where can we make improvements? The vast majority of us, right, our most dangerous part of going to our flight job is driving on the highway to get there.
Wow. But it's so true.
It
is
is.
so true. Now, a question has just come in. It says, did the women actually fly into space the other day on the, and can you explain where space begins and gravitation begins, all of that stuff, real quick?
Yeah, we'll do it real quick. Yes, yes, they did. So I'm not going to quote it correctly off the top of my head where the line for space is. But yeah, so technically there's however far from Earth is considered space, but you're going to get pulled back in at that point. It's not just being at a position. So rockets, when you watch them take off, first they go straight up, right? They got to get a little bit of space, but then you'll watch them tilt over. So when you're in an orbit, you're actually going around whatever you're orbiting faster than gravity is pulling you down. So it's not just reaching a point. So if you were static in space, even in that space, right, gravity's still going to pull you down. And that's how satellites or space debris or anything, like when it slows down enough that its orbit starts dropping, meaning it's getting closer to whatever it's orbiting, then gravity starts taking over even more. And our atmosphere, even though it seems very thin to us, right, when we're just down here, if you're going that fast, there are so many particles in the air, it's very, very hot. So it typically burns things up when it comes back in the atmosphere, which is why we're not concerned with small space debris or small rocks and things like that, because they just burn up in the atmosphere and they never get down here. So when like the Dragon capsule comes back in, or any capsule comes back in, it has an incredible heat shield on it that is protecting the astronauts and the capsule, right? So it's this heat shield that keeps them alive while they're entering back in through the atmosphere.
That is interesting. And so, is there any particular type of reading you would recommend, that something real light but help us to develop a foundation in our heads about this stuff, that in case we missed it in high school, like me?
I love, so just for fun reads, reading biographies or autobiographies of pilots or astronauts, and there's a slew of them out there, right? Just look up astronaut autobiography, or military pilot, or whatever type that you kind of find an interest in, and there will be a ton of them out there, and they're all so fascinating. Their stories are also engaging and interesting and hard to believe sometimes. You're just like, wow, what an amazing life. So that's very inspirational for me, is to read about other people who have accomplished these incredible things and really push the envelope of where we are with humanity, like going through Mach 1, right? And now we're looking at transonic and hypersonic aircraft, going, Mach 5. So hearing those things and kind of watching our journey of humanity, learning how to work with physics, is really cool. It's a lot of fun. And that always inspires me to go, oh, let me do a little more research on this.
So do you have any goals or aspirations to fly some of those types of aircraft?
That would be amazing if that opportunity ever comes around. I do have the aerospace engineering background. So I'm looking at potentially getting into flight test engineering. So getting to develop the tests that we want to run on either aircraft or rockets. And then depending on the rocket or aircraft, maybe even being at some point able to go on that and really test and see how things happen. But yeah, it'd be incredible. I love all of it.
Okay, good.
Airplanes and rockets.
That's beautiful. And I thank you for introducing that career, that whole shebang to the church biz audience, because I know I would have never thought real estate, you know. I do the basics, the pilots, the counter clerks, when you check in, the stewardesses or stewards, the mechanics, and the food techs.
Yep. That's a good list, and it just keeps growing. There's so many more opportunities out there.
So I'm like, only because I see them is why I think of them. And then, of course, we know about the ATCs, but it's like, I just would have never thought of those other things in that career field. So I'm really, really excited to share what I did learn on tonight. And I do pray that others have been blessed with this same information. Thank you again, LaTessa Meader, for being a part of Church Biz on tonight. Again, Church Biz, she is the founder and the president of Aspire Aerospace Education. Connect the young people in your life with this organization. Find out for yourself first what they offer, especially with summer coming. You can give your kids and grandkids the summer of their lifetime. See about getting them into the summer camps. Make the sacrifices. It would be so worth it on their behalf and yours. And they would bring a wealth of information back home to you. And I love to quote how the Bible says that Christ is all and in all. If he created all things, if God created all things, God is also the father of science, so that we can use science to find truth and fact, as an assistive device. But do what you can. Those of you in WCEG Talk Radio audience, to connect with Aspire, sow a seed in their direction. See how you can volunteer. You're looking for something to do great with your life? Why not? Because we're going to be flying. I will be in a few weeks. My godmother just came back from going to Hawaii, best trip of her life. That took hours. And we want safe people to work the industry, people we trust. So why not it be somebody you know? But again, LaTessa, thank you for being a part of us on this evening. Thank you, WCEG Talk Radio, and our Church Biz audience for being a part of our show on tonight. And like I do every week, I want to say take care, and don't forget to celebrate the Lord Jesus on this weekend and the sacrifices that he's made on our behalves. God bless you.
Thank you, Reverend Patrina. It was a delight speaking with you.
I enjoyed you.